When I was 13, my family decided to visit my grandparents who lived in a charming cabin nestled in the woods near a small, serene lake. The mornings offered breathtaking views, and the setting was idyllic, though the lack of Wi-Fi was a bit of a shock. All we had for entertainment was an ancient TV from the 1990s with a handful of channels and a trusty VCR player loaded with my grandmother's extensive collection of horror VHS tapes. Eager to escape the digital void, I convinced a friend to join me on this rustic adventure. The journey to the cabin was a picturesque 3-hour drive from town and a substantial 6-hour trek from our home. The road trip was nothing short of amazing, and we arrived at our woodland haven around 8 p.m. Greeted by the warmth of my grandparents, we were shown to our sleeping quarters, a spacious upstairs room with a single bed, an attached bathroom, and a balcony overlooking the glistening lake. Despite the winter chill and the falling snow, I, ever the warm-blooded creature, promptly opened a window to invite in the cold air. The first evening unfolded with hot chocolate, shared laughter, and a shower to wash off the road trip dust. The quaint cabin offered little in terms of modern entertainment, but my friend and I managed to secure permission for a movie night on the vintage TV. We settled on Friday the 13th, a classic horror choice that my grandmother would undoubtedly approve of. The night concluded with the eeriness of the film lingering as we closed the doors and retired to bed. The following morning, I awoke to the soft glow of sunlight streaming through the cabin windows. The snow-covered landscape beckoned, and my friend and I decided to embark on a walk around the forest. Seeking permission from my grandparents and dad, we were cautioned to stick to the designated route. Grandmother, ever the nurturing soul, packed a bag with sodas and snacks for our journey. The walk was serene and invigorating, the snow crunching beneath our boots as we traversed the picturesque woods. After about an hour, we paused on a rock to refuel. Suddenly, an unusual and jarring noise echoed through the air, prompting us to exchange anxious glances. Intrigued, we decided to investigate and stumbled upon a startling sight, a trail of blood staining the pristine snow. My initial thought was a predator's kill, but the distant cries for help compelled us to venture further. With trepidation, we followed the desperate pleas for assistance, the voice of a girl reaching us through the winter air. As we approached, my friend grew uneasy, suggesting it might not be a wise pursuit. Dismissing her concerns, I insisted that the girl could be lost, and we pressed on. Our calls echoed in the quiet forest until, to our shock, we stumbled upon another cabin. Entering cautiously, we were met with an eerie scene, a forsaken dwelling adorned with scattered belongings, decaying food, and the telltale signs of abandonment. Our exploration led us to a room that defied all reason. Chains adorned the walls, a bed with ominous straps, and stains of blood on the floor. A guttural scream escaped us as we turned to see a girl standing in the doorway, pleading for help. Terrified, we sprinted out of the cabin and back onto the trail, vowing to keep the gruesome discovery a secret from our elders. Returning to our room, my friend and I exchanged nervous glances, trying to bury the unsettling experience with movies and distractions. That night, as fatigue overtook us, I was abruptly awakened by my friend's scream. She pointed to the balcony, claiming the girl from the woods was there, accompanied by others, all imploring for our help. Panic set in as we closed the door, and our cries reached the ears of my parents. Confused and concerned, they entered our room, demanding an explanation for our distress. Reluctantly, we recounted the tale of the girls in the woods. Grandmother, with widened eyes, ushered us to sit down and disclosed a dark chapter in the cabin's history. Years ago, a heinous murderer had preyed on innocent girls, leaving a trail of unimaginable horror in that very cabin. Though the culprit had been apprehended, the remains of the victims remained undiscovered. Haunted by the possibility that those desperate cries were from souls denied peace, I can't help but wonder if they sought our help in finding their final resting place. The shadows of that unsettling encounter linger, a chilling reminder that some stories are etched into the very fabric of a place, waiting to be unraveled by those daring enough to venture into the unknown. Growing up in our small rural town of about 150 people, there wasn't much to do, especially in the era before cell phones took over our lives. We often found ourselves bored out of our minds during the long summer days, desperately seeking some form of excitement. That's when the legend of the abandoned cabin in the woods began to circulate among us kids. The story, passed down like a cherished secret, spoke of a cabin just south of the old schoolhouse that had long been deserted. According to local lore, the cabin bore witness to horrific murders in the distant past, and no one had dared to venture back since. The intriguing mystery of the place fueled our young imaginations, and one summer day, my friends and I decided to embark on a quest to find this elusive cabin. Excitement bubbled within us as we gathered our bags, eager to uncover the truth behind the rumors. However, in our haste, we failed to consider the approaching sunset. As darkness descended, we realized our journey would have to wait until morning. Undeterred, we met behind the old schoolhouse the next day, armed with determination and a vague sense of direction. Our search led us along what seemed to be a faint trail, barely visible from years of neglect. My friend, ever the cautious one, began marking our path with chalk on the trees, just in case we got lost. The dense woods seemed to stretch endlessly, and after hours of walking, doubts crept in. Had we overshot our destination? Frustration set in, threatening to overshadow our initial excitement. Just as despair started to take hold, a glimmer of hope emerged. My friend spotted what looked like a partially overgrown trail, and our spirits soared. With renewed energy, we followed the trail for about 20 minutes until, miraculously, we stumbled upon the fabled cabin. Elated and filled with a sense of accomplishment, we eagerly inspected our newfound discovery. The cabin, however, presented a challenge. It was tightly boarded up, leaving no obvious point of entry. Undeterred, my friend noticed a small window, and a daring plan unfolded. Our smallest companion, Jared, would squeeze through and, hopefully, find a way to open the cabin for the rest of us. With a collective effort, we managed to loosen the nails on the window, allowing Jared to slip inside. The atmosphere within the cabin was eerie, untouched by human hands for many years. It seemed frozen in time. Dust-covered decorations, abandoned shoes, and forgotten dishes told a silent tale of the past. As we cautiously explored the upper floor, a strange incident unfolded. Alone in one of the rooms, my attention was drawn to a glinting object beneath the bed. Picking it up, I heard an unmistakable voice in my ear, whispering two chilling words, "Get out." A shiver ran down my spine, and I stood frozen, scanning the room for any sign of another presence. Yet, there was no one to be found. Disturbed but unwilling to alarm my friends, I left the mysterious object where I found it and retreated downstairs. We decided it was time to leave, sealing the cabin as we found it. As we walked away, I stole a glance back at the cabin and, for a brief moment, saw a face at the window. It turned and vanished, leaving me questioning the thin line between imagination and reality. I remained silent about the unsettling encounter, unsure if what I experienced was a trick of the mind or a genuine paranormal event. The mystery of the abandoned cabin in the woods remained intact, leaving me with lingering doubts and a story to ponder for years to come. As I lay there in the rustic cabin amidst the towering pines of Yosemite, the uncertainty of the night unfolded like a mysterious tableau. It was my brother's bachelor party, an occasion meant for revelry and camaraderie, but a disconcerting air hung over the place, casting shadows on the festivities. The first inkling of the inexplicable came to me on that initial night. We had settled into our cabin, a cozy retreat rented by a group of my brother's friends for a 3-day camping extravaganza. As we nestled into our beds, the quiet of the forest outside was disrupted by an unexpected disturbance within. The ceiling above us creaked and groaned with an eerie insistence, as if an unseen presence traversed its time-worn expanse. In the spirit of rationality, I chalked it up to the whims of nature, perhaps thermal contraction induced by the cold night air, or the rhythmic dance of nocturnal creatures traversing the cabin's roof. My skepticism served as a lullaby, and I drifted into a restless slumber. However, as the sun dipped below the Yosemite horizon, a subtle disquiet settled upon the cabin like a veil. It became increasingly evident that this was no ordinary manifestation of natural forces. The third night, shrouded in an otherworldly hush, brought a disconcerting revelation. In a bid to escape the palpable unease, I retired early, leaving the revelry of the bachelor party echoing in the distance. The moment I sank into the solitude of my bed, the familiar creaking of the ceiling commenced, as if scripted by some unseen force. My attempts to dismiss it as mere happenstance faltered, and a bronze tile on the wall began an inexplicable dance, tapping and grinding against the surface with a ghostly insistence. Perplexed and perturbed, I grappled with the absence of logical explanations. Thermal expansion and mundane theories crumbled in the face of this spectral ballet. Determined to retreat into the realm of dreams, I closed my eyes, endeavoring to ignore the unsettling phenomena that played out in the shadows of the room. Yet, my futile attempts at repose were abruptly interrupted when an unseen hand seized my forearm. A hushed protest escaped my lips. "Nope," I muttered, refusing to engage with the prospect of a restless ghost seeking attention. In response, as if the ethereal entities reveled in my denial, the creaking and groaning crescendoed in a spectral symphony, echoing from the ceiling of the room down the hall. The cabin, once a haven of celebration, had become a theater for inexplicable occurrences. As the night wore on, I found myself entangled in a web of uncertainty, grappling with the inexplicable and wondering if, in the heart of Yosemite's wilderness, there existed forces beyond the grasp of reason. The echoes of that haunting night would linger, etched into the fabric of my memories, a ghostly enigma from a brother's bachelor party turned spectral sojourn. When I was between the tender ages of 9 and 10, I found myself immersed in the rustic charm of a camp nestled in the enchanting wilderness of Muskoka, Ontario. The camp held a peculiar rhythm, one week filled with shared activities and camaraderie, followed by another week dedicated to the exploration of the great outdoors on a canoe trip. Little did I know that this idyllic setting would become the stage for a surreal and eerie encounter that has lingered in the recesses of my memory to this very day. The scene was set in a cabin, a quaint abode that housed a group of restless kids, including myself. Picture 5 bunks neatly arranged, each occupied by a slumbering child, and in the corner, I perched atop the top bunk, my vantage point overlooking the sleeping arrangements of my companions. Behind a modest curtain, the camp counselor, the guardian of our nocturnal hours, rested in repose. It was a night, or rather, the early morning hours between 1 and 3 am, when I was abruptly roused from my sleep by an unfamiliar noise. As my groggy eyes adjusted to the dim moonlight filtering through the cabin window, I beheld a sight that defied the boundaries of my young imagination. Standing in the middle of the cabin, bathed in an eerie glow, was a figure unlike anything I had ever seen. It stood at a modest 5 feet, its form characterized by a pointed face, spindly fingers, and feet that seemed almost otherworldly. A creature, akin to a goblin, hunched over as it moved with an unsettling grace. The mysterious visitor proceeded to navigate the cabin, sniffing curiously over the lower bunks where my fellow campers lay oblivious to this nocturnal intrusion. I, frozen with fear, clung to the top bunk, praying that the creature remained unaware of my presence. It seemed as though it was on a peculiar mission, a quest for something or someone. Eventually, the creature, still unaware of my existence, made its way to the door. With a deliberate stride, it exited the cabin, descending the steps into the silent night. To my bewilderment, a series of events unfolded outside, a cacophony of sound as the fire barrel was knocked over. A mere coincidence, or perhaps a deliberate act by the mysterious entity? It was an ironic twist of fate, as I could hear the distant call of the counselors warning about the fallen barrel, their voices arriving too late to prevent the disturbance. As I pieced together the events, a chilling realization set in. The camp counselor, supposedly the protector of our slumber, remained undisturbed behind the curtain throughout the entire episode. It was as if the creature had specifically sought out the lower bunks, leaving those on the top untouched. To this day, well into my late 30s, the memory haunts me. I can't shake the feeling that the enigmatic being was searching for something, someone, perhaps a child who was awake. The stories of children being spirited away or mysterious places have always existed in folklore, but that night in Muskoka left me with more questions than answers. I never returned to that camp, and the encounter with the goblin-like entity remains an inexplicable enigma, etched into the fabric of my childhood memories. It was a crisp autumn day in the enchanting woods of Helen, Georgia, where a sense of adventure had lured me and my group of buddies onto the less trodden game trails branching off the main hiking path. The vibrant foliage and the sweet scent of pine filled the air as we traversed the labyrinthine trails, fueled by youthful curiosity and the thrill of the unknown. As we delved deeper into the heart of the forest, the realization dawned upon us that we had meandered far enough from the main trail, and perhaps it was time to retrace our steps. Yet, in our attempt to backtrack, we found ourselves entangled in a web of loops and turns that rendered our sense of direction futile. The lush canopy above seemed to conspire against us, casting shadows that blurred the once familiar surroundings. After what felt like an hour of aimless wandering, we stumbled upon a clearing that seemed to defy the natural order of the woods. In the midst of this secluded space stood a dilapidated cabin, its weathered wood whispering tales of time gone by. The front door, barely clinging to its hinges, surrendered with a mournful creak as we dared to open it. With each step inside, the floor groaned in protest, threatening to collapse beneath our weight. The interior held relics of a forgotten era, a mold-covered mattress that had succumbed to the relentless march of decay, random dishes strewn about as if frozen in a moment of abandonment, and, most intriguingly, an ancient ham radio that spoke of attempts to breach the isolation of the wilderness. The air within the cabin seemed thick with the lingering memories of those who had sought refuge within its decaying walls. As our exploration continued, a room unveiled a gruesome surprise: the skeletal remains of a creature, likely a canine or coyote, long decomposed and melded with the earth. The sight sent shivers down our spines, serving as a stark reminder that the woods held secrets, both beautiful and haunting. After absorbing the eerie ambience and satisfying our youthful curiosity, we decided it was prudent to make our way back to the safety of the main trail. However, despite our best efforts to retrace our steps, the elusive cabin seemed to have slipped through the fabric of the forest, evading subsequent attempts to rediscover its mysterious presence. Since that fateful day, we have returned to those woods around 5 times, each expedition fueled by the hope of stumbling upon that forgotten cabin. Yet, despite our determination, the elusive structure remains hidden, leaving us with a lingering sense of wonder and an indelible memory of a place lost in time.